Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the Event Industry News podcast. Today I'm joined by Chris Carver, CEO and co-founder of Sessionboard. He's recently announced the launch of AI evaluations, and with AI being top of the topics in the events industry all around, I thought no better opportunity to bring Chris on, talk a little bit about the product division, go into technical deep dives, look at the real world results, see what case studies and things are coming back from customers already. And then if we have time, maybe talk a little bit more about what's on the roadmap for Sessionboard next. Thank you very much, Chris, for coming on the podcast today.
No, man, thanks. Thank you for having me, Adam. This is awesome.
For those that don't know, could you just give us that high level background story into like how you got started in the events industry, the launch of Sessionboard, and what those last few years have looked like in terms of product development and growth and expansion?
Yeah, so I've been in the events industry, I think, all my life, even in college. But coming out of college, was in event tech, and then in 2010 went and ran a nonprofit that events were a big part of our strategy. And then in 2014, really full time. And we launched a platform for most of the major music festivals in North America, some in Europe. But fast forward to COVID, no music festivals. But having a bit of a nonprofit background, my partner and I quickly pivoted and built a virtual event platform like everybody else. But we really hyper-focused on helping nonprofits raise money during COVID through the virtual event platform. And it's crazy how timing works, but within 10 months, we essentially sold that company to Classy, or GoFundMe is the brand that people know. And during that process of COVID and all this, we really started to see the power and potential of content. I know that sounds like pretty obvious, but we just got really intrigued by it and about the potential and where it's going. And we talked a lot about, like, where's this post-COVID world going to be, and what's content going to look like, because everybody's doing digital now and they're going to go back to in person. So we took all the proceeds from the sale, didn't take a dime. So we had to sell multiple companies to make any money. And we launched Sessionboard. We launched Sessionboard a little over 3.5 years ago. And really the first onus was to be a best-in-class speaker and content management platform, really streamline that process from beginning to end when it comes to your speakers and content, everything from the call for papers, speaker evaluation, selection, onboarding, agenda. And quickly that became, I think, pretty popular, in the space, the fact that we were hyper-focused on this. And that's kind of how Sessionboard was born. And then, it's kind of evolved into where we're at today, which we'll talk about in a minute.
Well, I must say, it sounds to me like for the very few, COVID was somewhat a silver lining by the sounds of things. Maybe not at the time when it was all happening and stuff like that, but I don't think
it was forced focus. It was forced focus, which actually, when you're grinding at a business, no matter what you're at, and it's hard, the festival business is super hard. It was almost refreshing to be like, oh, okay, we get to start over.
Yeah.
And so it was a healthy focus.
I don't think many out there, maybe a handful, probably even less than that, can, wear the badge of 3-time event tech founder now, right? So we'll have a look. Maybe if anybody's watching this or listening to this and knows any other founder that's launched 3 event technology companies, yeah.
I don't know. You might be up there.
Not yet, but yeah. I think the first kind of question I'd really like to talk to you about is, what led you to launch AI evaluations? Was there a ha-ha moment? Was it user feedback, internal bottlenecks, something entirely different? Like, why invest in that element of the product?
So for me, it was pretty straightforward. So one of the core metrics in the speaker management process that I just constantly look at when we're building product is it going to save organizers time? Yep. Is this feature that we're adding going to save them time? And so, initially we've had a number of case studies done where different partners have calculated that it takes about 5 to 7 hours to manage a speaker from beginning to end, all the changes, all the updates, trying to track them down, managing evaluators and all that. So it takes about 5 to 7 hours. And the first real pass over the last few years, we've kind of calculated with, 6 or 7 partners that the tool will save about 2 to 3 hours of that time. And so as AI has become more and more popular, I like to say that, I don't really care about AI being focused on like the sexy stuff. It's like, where in that workflow can you implement AI to help save organizers time? And the obvious one for me, the obvious first step one for me is can you help augment, not replace, but can you help augment the process of evaluating speaker and session submissions? Because you get hundreds, if not thousands, 20 to 30% of them are garbage anyway. So you're spending a ton of time just sifting through that. I mean, this is what AI is built for. And so that to me was quite obvious, a place to implement AI. And then we have a litany of things. I think maybe by the time this will go out, we'll have released our second piece, which here's another example. So conference teams, event teams, and this, Adam, everybody sends their bio in different character limits, different tones, different styles. They send their abstracts, different tones, different styles, different limits. Well, why not set up a kind of a persona to say, automatically bulk update those with all of the character limits of this that have this tone, check for grammatical errors, and then update it. Like, that's a no-brainer. And so, so that's really what we're doing when it comes to the speaker management workflow that we're working on, where I think it gets really interesting, more of the sexy stuff over the next couple months and whatever, is where you start to help bridge the gap between the on-stage event content and the marketing content, because how those are curated and created are very different, and they need dissemination. And there's a lot of things out there that are doing it, but what needs to happen is you need to present the content and the speakers in a way that facilitate that, because right now it's just a big leap going from the event content to the marketing content and creating content for the appropriate channel. So I think there's a ton of interesting stuff there. I think there's a ton of interesting stuff in giving. So here's a thing that I think about a lot, and I'm excited to keep working on it, is when I go to a session, say I go to hear you, Adam, talk about a very specific, topic. I'm probably quite interested in the topic. And for me, I like to go to sessions where they're not just surface level sessions, like give me some real detail because I'm a practitioner in X, Y, and Z. Well, I think a no-brainer for AI is to make a suggestion of, hey, if you went to this session and you're interested in this topic, here's 5 other researchers or 5 other experts that, speak on this topic. And here's 4 or 5 other, blog posts or research papers or whatever. And if you fed that to the marketing team, they could put that into a sequence, and now you're nurturing, an incredible customer. But it all starts to me with, which again, I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, but it all starts to me with your speakers, your subject matter experts, your influencers, and you have to have a way to be able to index those so that the AI can do it right. Otherwise, it's just, bad data in, bad data out. And so it to me all starts with the speaker management workflow. For us, it started with the AI evaluations. The beauty of that, as we start to make recommendations of, and so here's a few other examples of why the AI evaluations I think is just such an obvious place for us to start. Was, you get, I think when we've seen so many event teams, content teams that have, they have committees of evaluators. Well, what are they doing? They're limiting the number of submissions that an evaluator can get because they're worried about evaluator burnout. Like, it's hard to actually look at through and really be intentional. And it takes a lot of time. Most of those people have another job or they're a volunteer or whatever. And so there's a lot of bias that gets incorporated into the human thing, but everybody's worried about, like, this is kind of some of the healthy skepticisms that's popped up. They're worried about the bias of the AI. And it's like, I'm not saying that there's not, and there's some hallucinations, but man, as a compliment to a tired evaluator, it gives them a different perspective. So I think this is just going to be a natural, like, addition to the current evaluation process, but it will also allow for event teams to, rethink how they're structuring their, their initial programming of their call for papers, of their event. The AI, the evaluator, you can set up the persona to say, hey, here's 5 submissions that all look kind of similar. Why don't you put them on a panel? Now you've got 5 influencers that are promoting a similar topic. And then, or like, this is where I get really excited, and a lot of people are excited about this, is, hey, this submission is from an historic sponsor. So automatically update the sponsor team. This is from a customer, automatically update the account manager. So there's a lot of stuff that you'll see over the next, 2, 3, 4 months that just really hyper focus on making that super efficient, really building a great program around your event, and then, ultimately helping marketing disseminate what they can do with the event content. I know I jumped around a lot of places, but
I didn't want to stop you, mate, because there's so much gold in there. But I think first and foremost for me, it's really cool to hear that even already, kind of your solution is a co-pilot. It's not a replacement for people. It's there to help them, support them, do their stuff more efficiently. I think just on the the checking of grammatical errors and the tone and voice, we forget that even though it's individual and personal representation, when we're putting it out as event marketing, event content on agendas and things like that, ultimately that is a representation of our brand as organizers. Yeah. And if, unfortunately, sometimes those things slip through the net, name being spelled wrong, something not being quite right, but then ultimately that kind of, it just chips away at the integrity and the kind of the brand value of the brand that's been built in the event and stuff like that. So I think, straight away, even though that's not necessarily saving marketing dollars or something like that, it is reducing the risk of that brand being perceived in the wrong way.
Well, I had a conversation. So 2 days ago, we were in DC, and we've been hosting these, we call them event content labs. And it was awesome. We had 20 event content folks in the room for 2.5 hours talking about, like, the AI they use in their personal life, and then how they're thinking about using it in their business life. And the thing for me is, I think we are starting, at least from these 20 individuals. I don't know if this is statistically significant yet, but from these 20 individuals, it was really interesting how I feel like we're starting, if you think about AI on the adoption curve, I think we're getting past the initial kind of big concerns that people had. And it's really fascinating to see how people are using it in their personal life. There's actually a bit more skepticism in the professional life, but people are, what I found happening is there's some skepticism at the executive level, but they're all going rogue and using, the tools outside of what they're even being told not to do. It's really interesting how, it's just starting to percolate within. And I think it's going to be very hard to stop the use. And the exciting thing is that I think this is just one of those workflows that is ripe for support.
Yeah, I agree. Just to carry on that conversation, though, about skepticism and ensuring that safeguards and checks are in balance and stuff like that, I'd love to understand a little bit more about, like, how your AI is trained a little bit. Is it based on the event specifically? Is it taking information and knowledge and stuff cohesively across all customer accounts to train it? And if I could just add to that as well. I think as well, like, what kind of safeguards and checks are in place just to make sure there is no bias with the AI? Maybe when it gets more developed and it starts to kind of really make those hyper recommendations to both the organizer and maybe attendees and things like that. Like, how do you see that working out?
Yeah, I mean, that's the sensitive side that we have to be really conscious of, because this is basically the organization's data. So, like, you know, I mean, you've even asked me in the past, like, do you see creating a marketplace of speakers? I'm like, well, this is we've had this conversation. This is the organization's data. I'm a steward of their data. How do I ensure that their data is secure? They trust us, but also, you know, are there ways that I can leverage technology that help them? And so in that regard, yeah, what is going to need to, and this is an opportunity to change this. So historically, and I don't know how you all do it at Event Tech Live, but there's a lot of discussion when you're in the call for papers world. Should we create a really short form so that we're worried about, so that we don't have drop off? And in this case, number one, you need to be able to give the organizer visibility into who's dropped off, who hasn't finished, right? So that they can go back. But this is an opportunity now to actually collect more information so that the AI can really kind of grasp onto it, right? The less information you get, just like a human evaluator, right? So my take is this is an opportunity to kind of change things up a little bit, but it's also, for us, it's an opportunity to enrich the data. This is why it goes hand in hand with our speaker CRM. So what the speaker CRM is, and you and I have talked about this, is, you know, it's a database of all of your speakers that you can search by topic and all of that. You see the core attributes, you see historicals, what sessions, what webinars they have spoken on, any internal notes, and then the areas that with the support of partners, we'll be pulling in live transcripts that enrich the data from previous speaking. So if that speaker is in your network, then there is data that the system can also learn on. And then there's a bit more of a strategy that we're working on that is more later in the year, that will allow the speaker to passively upload more information that allows them to be even more attractive in the call for papers process.
Interesting. That's really interesting. I guess my next question is really around kind of like, I know you guys have only just like publicly announced this and launched this, but I'm assuming this has already been kind of tested and trialed with some really close customers and some really good stewards of Sessionboard. But is there anything that surprised you and your team, like during those early testing, like user behavior, use cases, like feedback? Was there anything that you didn't expect, or has there been any golden nuggets there?
Yeah, any surprise?
And no is a perfectly good answer.
Well, okay. Here's an interesting idea that came up. It was a surprise to me. Is the other day I was talking to one of our customers, because we had a customer advisory group on this, and we had them, we surveyed them, and I think 1 out of 10, you know, 1 being not helpful at all, 10 being life-changing. I think out of the 25 folks, it came up at the AI evaluators was about a 7.5, right?
Nice.
Which is I think really good. I don't expect 10s across the board, especially with the healthy skepticism. People like, it's going to give me bad numbers. Well, a human could give you bad numbers if they're having a bad day, right? Or if they know the person, they could overinflate the numbers. And so the interesting thing for me was, as I've seen a little bit of this, like these questions, I'm like, I think people just need to try it, right? And so somebody said to me, well, why can't I just run the personas? Because you can create different personas, and you can give them different criteria. You can have them be, you know, different styles, different likes, different dislikes, all of this stuff. Well, one said, well, why can't I just run it on all of my submissions from last year to have it give me recommendations and see if anything slipped through the cracks? I'm like, that's pretty awesome. Or they also were like, well, I just want to run it on my sessions as well, so I can have, kind of evaluate the session topics, not as a post-session survey or anything, but as what did we miss? What did we miss in all of this data that we have historically? And so I think it's going to be really interesting to see how people use it that way. Or I also think it's going to be interesting to see what problem they want to solve out of the gates. Is it to get rid of the 20% garbage no matter what, just so I can focus on the 70 or 80%? Or is it truly as an assistant, and do I take the recommendations? Because the other thing you can do with the tool is you can have it answer specific questions about and so to me, it's really early days. I wanted to put it out. This is what my approach to this type of thing is. This is going to evolve. It's going to change, but I could sit on it and try to make it perfect for 6 months, or let the early adopters kind of tell me what is useful. And and we've made it optional. That's the other thing in a security standpoint, is you have to toggle it on to actually have even the AI run. So it's not something that you have to use. And to me, we'll learn a ton.
Yeah, I think customer-led growth and product development is the best way, right? Because ultimately you're not investing, going down a rabbit hole, thinking you're going in the right direction, and they want something totally different. It's also good to get the view of many rather than a few, especially when it comes to kind of the post MVP. Get this out there, like, right now, let's see what the wider industry, what the wider customer base really want and how they want to use this.
And I want to be careful, like, I think it's probably a few steps beyond like MVP. It's pretty cool. In our own testing, we had it. Here's the other thing that's really neat is we've had it test the other day. We did 350 submissions in 3 minutes.
Yeah, so that's like.
Here's the interesting thing about it is, we then went back and said we tweaked the persona. So you're basically tweaking the prompt. Okay. And said, hey, can you rerun that? And it actually, so where I'm really started to get interested in is what are the ideal prompts that you could give the personas to really be, and so that I think will get flushed out over time even more. And look, I think those ideal prompts are going to come from the customer base that is using it. And when they want to share those, I think it's going to be gold for other organizers.
Yeah, I agree. I think the more that this is used, the better the product becomes for everybody involved, right? And I think actually sometimes, going back to your thought about like usage and that rating that people gave of like 7.5, right? That's in my opinion, that's a really good score. You and the team should be really proud of that score already. With a brand new product, with a brand new element of the product market.
Here's the interesting, Adam. So in this, like, call it customer advisory group, we have this is what I'm kind of also looking for is, we have a number of folks that are one-person teams. They're evaluating hundreds, and I don't know how big your CFP team is, but it's like they're one-person teams. And so there's a lot of value for 2 people. And then there's the groups that get thousands of submissions that have committees after committees, and it's like herding cats of those. And there's nothing wrong with that. They're all experts in their own right. So again, this is a co-pilot. This is an assistant to that. But when you're getting thousands of submissions, if you can cut this number of submissions down by 200, 250, 300, I mean, you can start to do the math on legitimately, if you're looking through those submissions, it's going to take you probably 5 or 10 minutes, even if it's a garbage submission, if you're doing it justice. This is why people have to shut down their CFP early. It's why they limit the number of submissions the different evaluators have to do. So to me, anything you can do to get the evaluators efficiently focused on the right submissions, because maybe now they have time to say, oh, you know what? This submission has some holes, but I really think this potential speaker is really strong. I'm going to actually spend some time with this person or put them on a panel. And now you can actually spend some time cultivating and building deeper relationships. So I think that's really interesting. The other thing is you now have time to actually give speakers who submitted some real feedback, because a lot of times you get so busy that you're just like, denied, and they don't know exactly why.
Yeah. And I agree with you there, because I think actually the evaluator's time needs to shift a little bit. And I'd be really interested to see what you think about this as well. So as somebody who looks through hundreds of submissions every year for his own events, clearly seen a rise in the number of AI submitted submissions, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. I've done it myself. Like I use ChatGPT and others to help me write those submissions, because ultimately it actually reads better than what I'd probably write down first time. But that actually makes it then hard in some cases to understand if that person actually knows about that topic or if they've just done a really good research piece, right? And that has actually caught me out. Even myself, that's caught me out at one of my events where somebody submitted an excellent submission. And unfortunately, they fell apart on stage live at the event because they didn't actually know that content to any level of depth and things like that. That reflected on me. That was my mistake. But I think actually my opinion is now that it's not the submission, the review panel should not be at that bleeding edge of like sifting through all of those early submissions. It's actually now they've got a shortlist doing this bit, which is just doing the human to human bit and checking that person has a level of depth of knowledge, confident speaker, comes across well, and they can put them on stage.
Totally. Yeah, it's an emergency room, right? Your doctors aren't standing at the door, and you need to be able to triage the ones and then allow for, your time to be spent on really pulling this out, because maybe that person would be really good if they were paired with a true expert, right? I don't know. But yeah, you're 100% correct. Again, this is why I'm emphasizing that was one of the other things. As much as I emphasize that this is an assistant, a co-pilot, people want to be so binary and think it's one or the other. And I can't emphasize enough. Well, that's not what my intention is. I don't want to remove human, the human element to it. It's just a tool. I think it's just to me, again, I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, but it's a no-brainer. I think in a year or two, you're going to have it running just like you have transcription on a webinar.
I want to talk to you a little bit finally about the future. And I'm already thinking of weird and wonderful ways that Sessionboard can evolve in terms of value. Right at the beginning, you very clearly said that there's this relationship between submissions and the team that deals with speakers and call for papers and things like that, and the marketing team, right? Because the marketing team ultimately want those speakers and that content to help promote the event, whether that's through, videos of the speakers, whether that's through, speaker banners, it might be content, it might be articles and things like that. Do you see an evolution of Sessionboard where it's with AI, it's curating those assets and that content for the marketing team then to put out? And conversely, do you see Sessionboard being the platform in which that content comes back into to then create more content that then can be pushed out further again after the event to help that event kind of have an evergreen effect? And I'm thinking already, us as a team, we use a abstract solution, but we also use another platform for clips of the event content. We use another thing for those transcriptions and those PDF takeaways. And so we ourselves are using a lot of different technology in different places to achieve that. Do you think Sessionboard will become the operating system for that?
Yeah, that's interesting. It's a good question. And first, before I answer that, I do want to say that the evaluators, the AI evaluators, don't have to just be on submissions. You can import your sessions, and they can evaluate the sessions that you've already kind of potentially decided on. So they can give you a review of that. So it's not just submissions. So I just want to, which creates a whole new set, because there's a lot of groups that curate 50% of their of their agenda, well, still having that assistant be able to say, hey, are there holes in this? Okay, so future state, I would love, just like every all-in-one system would say, is Sessionboard is going to be this amazing, it's going to do everything, right? My job at Sessionboard is to do a great job of indexing the content, whether that is event content or marketing content, so that you could utilize the best-in-class tools to do everything else. So will we have tools that help with that? Yes, but at the same time, like, there's going to be 10,000 AI tools that do video, do audio, do automated podcasts, do all this stuff, like there already are. And so my job is to make it so easy to be able to integrate those tools, just like we do with your Reg systems now, just like we are, by the time this rolls out, we'll have our integration with On24. We will be working on with other webinar tools to be able to pull all of that information in to create a database that is so rich that your marketing team can easily leverage it with whatever tools that they're doing. Right. So from that's the number one thing. How can I just continue to enrich the database and index the database and allow for search that is how you need to search? So marketing, if I'm in marketing and I have any type of activation or whatever, my first thought is I know the topic that I'm talking about. I know the topic that we really want to go deep in. So you have to give them topical level search. So they're not thinking about, Adam Parry. They're thinking about like event tech, AI and event tech. And so they type in their database, their topic, and then it's going to pull up all of the historical content, the event content, the webinar content, potentially marketing content. And then what is so powerful is it's going to show you the experts that are tied to that content, which is so critical in today's environment, as you have Google and even LinkedIn really changing their algorithms to be look for expert-led content with authority, content with trust, content with expertise. And so this is where I'm really focused a ton of time on, is how do we bring that all together and index it so that all of the other thousands of AI tools can leverage this type of content. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've got one final question for you, but that's a lie. I've actually got then 3 just for fun, rapid fire questions for you afterwards. Other than what you've already mentioned, what does the AI roadmap look like for Sessionboard? Are there things that you would really love to develop and bring in that you can talk about, obviously?
Yeah, I think the best way to describe it is if you think about the workflow of the speaker management process, that's number one. Every step of the way of that workflow is going to have some type of AI influence, I would say. So step 1, we rolled out this AI evaluation. Step 2 will be remixing the speaker content, meaning when I say remixing, editing bios, editing the abstracts, editing the session titles, editing the session descriptions in bulk, right? Based off of preset things. And then from there, there's a whole slew of interesting stuff when it comes to identifying sponsors, identifying sales prospects, identifying sessions that are appropriate for them. And then from there, you get into the whole agenda. How can we help people start to, not have to start from a blank piece of paper every time? And so you'll get into a lot of that. You'll also get into things that enrich the CRM, enrich the contact profiles, that bolster the search, that allow you to actually get a full picture of that speaker. So you're not going to YouTube and then LinkedIn and then blah, 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 whatever. So, I mean, without being so explicit, because I think to my point earlier, what we are doing is, I know that we're rolling out, and by the time this will probably launch, it'll be out. So I know we're rolling out the AI editing capability, but as we get feedback, I might put one in front of the other because I think it could just be that much more powerful. and because my metric is how much time can I save. Now, as we get into some of this other stuff, there is, the ability to help them generate more revenue. So that's also something that, I'm kind of taking into account.
Okay. 3 rapid fire questions. And first of all, thank you very much for taking the time. I found this super interesting. I think you're heading in absolutely the right direction. Everybody wants to save time, and AI is that tool to help save time and errors and stuff like that. But my 3 questions for you. Biggest myth in AI when it comes to event tech right now. What do you think that is?
Biggest myth? Look, I guess as somebody who's developing some of these tools, I'm not necessarily drinking the AI Kool-Aid for everything. Like AI, yeah, it might help with networking, but you still got to show up. The AI, when it comes to content, it is going to be so hard to make the leap from what it is today, really, what it can create in terms of really good content. But there's still AI slop is a term, which is just surface level, maybe not even surface level. It's just, it doesn't have that human touch to it. It doesn't have the stories to it. You need that within the event world to build connection, right? So I think AI is a tool. It is not the end all be all. And I think most people would agree with that, but at least in the next 5 years, I don't know what's going to happen after that, but at least in the next 5 years, I think we're going to still need this interaction. I still love to see you in person. We only see each other, a couple times a year. Like, there's something to that. There's a reason why I would fly from the US to London, and oftentimes it is for that connection. And then ideally, and of course I would say that is, I want to learn something too,
Second question. What's the one AI tool that's changed the way that you as a founder goes around his day-to-day business, non-event tech? This is just day-to-day stuff, the tool that you can't live without.
Yeah, I've jumped between, just ChatGPT and Gemini. But actually, to do a little curveball on that, the thing that gave me the aha moment for a lot of this, and it was actually more recently, because before I was just kind of trudging through it. It was kind of cool and whatever. But I don't know how much you've used a Notebook LM.
Yeah, a little bit.
I think it's pretty unreal for me. The light bulb went on. I took like 3 of our blog posts on the Speaker CRM, put it in Notebook LM, and it created a podcast for me where it was AI gen, and it actually sounds so real. It sounds so real. And I immediately was like, holy mackerel. You could take your live transcript, plug that into Notebook LM, and immediately after your on-stage session, you could have a podcast that's talking about it.
Yeah. I see innovative organizers actually plugging that together with live content. So maybe there's a slight delay, but almost people are listening to a podcast show about the event from a remote perspective because they can't be there in person. So they're getting kind of like the Joe Rogan version of the content. And it's all the highlights from all the different sessions. And this session said something cool over here, and they said something cool over here. And it's more of a TV, it's more of a radio show than
very much.
Yeah,
I think I think there's a large segment of people that like to digest that way. That's how I like to digest, information. And that actually just opens up the opportunity. Oh, one of the cool things I heard the other day at this content lab is one of the conference organizers. What they did at their event is they had like 40 little tables, little high top tables with a microphone on top, and they had set up conversations where people would come and they would just talk about a certain topic, and it's free flowing. It's like us talking, but every one of the tables is basically recording the conversation, and it's automatically transcribes it. And then you think about what you could do with those conversations, pull out that, because a lot of the expertise is in the room, so, and they're in these open conversations where we're just kind of riffing off of certain ideas and being able to, kind of pull that information. One of the powerful things about AI, and this is where search is going to change, is the AI isn't digesting stuff in sequence. It's like digesting it all at once. Yeah. So digesting it all at once, and then to your point, highlighting the key points, the best points in all of those conversations, or putting them into almost digital tracks. It's like you could have those tables. Like they have a 30-minute session. For 20 minutes, the person talks, and then people break into small groups. You're recording them. And then now because there's people in that audience that are also PhD level folks, that you would love to pull that information out. So really some really interesting ideas when session topics.
We're doing exactly that in a couple of weeks at Excel. We're running a operational style kind of for ops people, AI hackathon for 5 or 6 hours. And it's very going to be much collaborative, and everybody getting involved and sharing their challenges, their pain points, and maybe some solutions and things like that. But that's the intention with us. We're going to record every group session, every conversation, and it's only going to be used for the group, so it's not going to go anywhere else. But then we're going to take that with everything else that we've learned and everything else we've captured, run that through, and really give them a detailed, deep dive level takeaway that they can refer back to. So it's all about that they can then go and say, hey, this was really good. This was the key takeaways. We said this on this, and maybe we even make that into a podcast and things like that.
Well, but that's where you extend. This is interesting, because we did this with one of our first content labs. We basically had the lab, super great information. We had mics at each one of the tables, so we were recording it. We transcribed it, took the 3 or 4 transcriptions, combined them, created an ebook. You could totally do a podcast. And then we actually did an open webinar where people came in and they talked about the ebook, but they also then gave their ideas from it. And then we haven't completed it yet, but then that actually creates another opportunity to do another ebook or another, so extending the conversation is actually getting easier and easier. And that's historically been the issue. The issue has been what goes on in the live stage, presenting a PowerPoint or whatever, is very different than how people want to digest it into their daily lives. So being able to, shorten that gap between the two is really a key position we want to help with. I don't think we're going to be the only thing that does that, but we want to be able to index that in a way so you can use the tools to do that.
And I think this plays really well into something you've heard me speak about often, which is this concept of the forgetting curve, which is the amount of information as individuals we're able to retain after an event, which is really, really low. It's like 20% if we're lucky. And I believe in this thing called the return on attendance, right? So it's like, I want to talk to people, I want to participate, I want to network, I want to engage, I want to learn, but I have a real challenge of quantifying and extracting all the value out of that, my return on attendance, because of how inefficient we are just as humans and the challenges that come along with that and all that kind of stuff. And all of this kind of helps move the needle on that, I think.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's like, what's interesting is what I care about as an attendee may be different than what my boss cares about. So can I actually take the data that I'm given as an attendee, the transcripts and all this other, the summaries, and say, hey, wait a minute, but my boss also cares about X, Y, and Z. How can I actually create a report for them that is more oriented to, what they want to see? And can you do that automatically? And then hopefully by doing that, you're actually driving attendance up for next time and engagement year round and things like that.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, we could go on for hours on this, mate. My final question, bit of a wild card, I'm not going to lie. If the Sessionboard AI had a personality, what would its reviewer style be? Would it be more Simon Cowell or Oprah? What do you think?
Oh, man. Well, okay, I'll answer it as to I would have to go with Simon Cowell, but absolutely. However, that's the point. The point is that you define your own persona, you design your own, and it's not just one. You can have as many as you want. So what I would suggest is you need both. You need the Simon Cowell and you need the Oprah, if you will.
And I love that. I love that concept, because you're going to need a different style for different events, different formats, and all that kind of stuff, right? One glove does not fit everything.
Yeah, for the PhD level stuff, you need a real detailed expert. If it's more of a scientific based conference, you need a persona that has that. Versus if somebody is more story driven, whatever, you need a persona that's going to identify that. So that's why you should be able to kind of mix and match constantly, and potentially put two personas on one. All right. So, to get different perspectives. And that's the whole point. The whole point is to save time and give you a variety of perspectives that just human intervention has a hard time identifying.
Yeah, I love that. That's actually one of my hacks. Everything that I run through well, not everything, but certain things I run through ChatGPT, I ask it to look at it from 3 different perspectives.
That's great, man.
The creative, the idealist, and the pessimist, and things like that. And it's like really interesting to see how it kind of like spits it out, and then it gives you the all-rounded ideal scenario kind of thing. So
So what is your take on Liverpool? Blah blah blah. Give me these.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think the one thing that I've learned about platforms like ChatGPT and others is they're people pleasers. They know a lot about you already, and they kind of just give you the information that they think that you want to hear.
It's so nice. It's so nice.
But actually, this is more agreeable than my wife. I can
yell at you and you say thank you.
But I think that's where the power users, the real high level users of AI, understand that, and they start to push back a little bit and really kind of make sure that what the information that they're getting out is truly valuable, rather than just nice to hear kind of thing. Well, Chris, I can't thank you enough for spending some time talking to us and deep diving into Sessionboard's new AI co-pilot. Congratulations. Really excited to see what's coming next for you guys. Before we go, where can people check out all of the information on the Sessionboard AI co-pilot?
Yeah, just go to sessionboard.com. In the dropdown, we have AI evaluators called out. It will ultimately be under our AI, the Sessionboard studio. But yeah, sessionboard.com. If anybody wants to email me, you can find me on LinkedIn, or just shoot me an email at chris@sessionboard.com. I love feedback. Whether you want to use it or not, the feedback is really, really helpful.
And I would also personally say, if anybody that's made it to this point, do go out and check out the Sessionboard team's content. It's some of the best in the industry. It's really educational, helpful, very well thought out. I kind of want to nick a couple of his team, if I'm honest, for Event Industry News. But yeah, go and check that out, because it's not just about selling, abstract solutions. It's about providing real value. So thanks once again, Chris. And for everybody that made it this far, thanks for listening in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
Thanks, Adam.